our special guests, especially our honorable members of parliament, academics from the University of Mauritius and other higher education institutions in Mauritius. Welcome to this special event, which is the official launch of the book titled Sustainability and SDGs in Mauritius, COVID-19 Opportunity or Constraint, which is co-authored by Professor Sheila Benoiri, Mr. Sunil Dwarkasing, and Professor Rajendra Gunput. I'm Krishni Apadu, Senior Lecturer of Law at the University of Mauritius and PhD student, and also an environmental and climate activist, and it gives me great pleasure to be your Master of Ceremony for today's event. I will give you a brief aperçu of the program, and before that I would like to remind everyone to please kindly switch off or put your mobiles on silent. So in terms of this evening's program, we will have speeches from Professor Gunput, followed by Mr. Sunil Dwarkasing and Professor Sheila Benoiri. We will then have the privilege to hear from our chief guest, Professor Armugam Parsuraman, who will proceed with the official launch of the book. Refreshments will then be served outside, followed by sales of books and also book signing. I had the privilege of going through the book, and I have to say that I'm impressed by the multidisciplinary nature of the contributions, the wealth and breadth of relevant data, as well as the critical perspective that has been offered by the three authors. This book comes at an opportune time as the world continues to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as numerous global challenges, including the climate crisis, human rights violations, poverty, biodiversity loss, and conflicts. I have no doubt that the book will be a treasure trove for academics, students, practitioners, scientists, and policymakers, as well as all those who have an interest with the Sustainable Development Goals. Allow me to read from Professor Vishanti Siupal's appreciation of the book, and I quote, "Against the crisis of COVID-19 and the climate-induced vulnerabilities of Mauritius, the authors draw on powerful voices to highlight how social and planetary imbalances exacerbate each other. The crisis provides opportunities to challenge neoliberalism in support of holistic sustainable development, the promotion of solidarity and equitable, socially inclusive and environmentally sustainable economic growth, and people-centered democracy. Certainly a read for contemporary times." I will now invite Professor Gunput for his speech.
Merci, Ms. Apani. Protocole oblige. Mes remerciements au professeur Armugam Parsuraman d'être venu pour le lancement du livre. Je l'ai connu depuis longtemps. Pour ma thèse de doctorat, il était venu en personne et m'a beaucoup soutenu pour cette thèse. Je me souviens comme si c'était hier, que le temps passe vite, et c'est pratiquement une trentaine d'années derrière nous maintenant. Mais il n'a pas changé. Et mes remerciements à tous les amis, les collègues de l'université, Patrick Georges Paya, il est là, Dr. Michel est là, Dr. Acha est là, des camarades, des amis. C'est très intéressant parce que c'est un problème qui nous concerne tous. Le SDGs, ce n'est pas le droit de la famille, au divorce, que sais-je encore. Ça concerne tout le monde. Et c'est un ouvrage qui a été écrit, on a pratiquement commencé il y a au moins une dizaine d'années avec l'inévitable, irrésistible, inoxydable M. Sunil Dwarkasing, en me disant voilà, il y a un projet de superviser son travail. Je dis donc, je suis très content, on peut aller de l'avant. Et ensuite, d'autres amis qui ne sont pas venus, et le professeur Benoiri est venu rajouter son point de sel dedans, et on a monté un ouvrage. Et la crédibilité va aux deux auteurs, certainement. Parce que si vous ne le savez pas, maintenant vous le savez, les Nations Unies font toujours des critiques amères contre deux pays, deux îles, parce que pas mal de pays au monde l'aiment évidemment. avant, la Grande-Bretagne, la France, Madagascar ont écrit quelque chose sur les SDGs. Pour eux, 2 pays sont à la traîne, évidemment, Maurice et les Seychelles. On n'a pas écrit grand-chose. Mais maintenant, c'est des choses faites avec l'ouvrage. Si vous connaissez un ouvrage qui a été écrit à l'île Maurice sur les SDGs, levez la main. Pas tous à la fois, quand même. Il n'y en a pas. C'est quoi SDGs? Je ne sais pas. Si vous interviewez 10 000 personnes, c'est quoi SDGs? Chacun dira quelque chose de différent. SDGs, pour moi, c'est la pauvreté, d'autres dira c'est inéqualité, d'autres dira c'est tsunami, etc., etc. Mais nous, on a vu, comme M. Abadou l'a bien souligné, l'approche multidisciplinaire. Les 2 co-auteurs n'ont pas hésité à critiquer ouvertement, mais dans le bon sens. Parfois, on ne peut pas trop critiquer l'État, le gouvernement, parce que nous tous, on a une responsabilité à jouer. Ce n'est pas seulement l'affaire de l'État, ce n'est pas l'affaire du gouvernement, ce n'est pas l'affaire du président de la République, ça concerne tout le monde. Nous tous, on doit être soudés pour qu'on puisse protéger les 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Comme le nom indique, c'est sustainable. It must be sustainable. Ce n'est pas quelque chose de courte durée, c'est quelque chose de longue durée. Voilà, quand on écrit l'ouvrage, aujourd'hui c'est bien, et peut-être demain c'est un livre qui est assez vieillot, quelque chose comme ça, parce que COP26 n'a rien de concret à mon avis, soit être pessimiste, soit être réaliste. Il n'y avait pas grande chose sur COP26. Oui, des États sont venus, on a beaucoup parlé, mais qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Pas grand chose. COP27 arrive en Égypte, COP Marrakech viendra, et c'est un événement pour l'Afrique aussi, parce qu'on fait partie de l'Afrique. On peut aller encore plus loin, plus haut, plus fort, dans le développement de Sustainable Development Goals. Il y a quelque chose qu'on n'aime pas parler du tout, le Covid-19, qui est arrivé soudainement et tout le monde est resté impuissant. C'est quoi cette maladie? Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire? Et ça nous a pris beaucoup de temps, pratiquement 2 ans et demi, que Covid joue avec nous. Maintenant, on est heureux aujourd'hui, sans masque, d'être là présent, parce qu'il y a d'autres pays, même l'Europe, la France, sont en train de souffrir. Ils n'ont pas toujours le masque, c'est fermé. Mais le Covid a eu de mauvaises choses, a eu aussi de bons côtés. On a appris à faire la queue, surtout pour les Mauriciens. On a appris à être mieux disciplinés, surtout les Mauriciens. On a beaucoup appris avec le Covid. Le mauvais côté, le Covid a tout brisé, tous les tabous, tous les droits fondamentaux. Restriction à la liberté de marcher, restriction à la religion, restriction au freedom of movement, etc., etc. Mais il est temps de réfléchir. Alors, l'ouvrage est apparu, publié en Malaisie, publié par une belle édition Les Printemps. Qui ne connaît pas l'édition Les Printemps? Alors, si l'ouvrage se vend à 500 roupies, c'est pas cher. Vu le nombre d'années que les 2 auteurs ont mis pour l'écrire, ils m'envoient tous les jours des emails. Voilà un chapitre 1, 2, 3, et j'arrive à lire, à corriger, modifier, amender, pour qu'aujourd'hui, vous avez un ouvrage en couleur, 420 pages. On ne peut pas tout dire, mais on a pratiquement tout dit. Peut-être que l'année prochaine, on viendra avec d'autres ouvrages, allez savoir. Mais vous êtes là pour nous soutenir, et j'apprécie beaucoup qu'il y a pas mal de monde qui sont venus nous écouter. Conclusion, merci.
Thank you, Professor Gunford. I will now invite Mr. Sunil Dwagasin for his address.
Our chief guest, Professor Mugam Paswaman. Ladies and gentlemen, it makes me an immense pleasure to address a few words about something which I have done together with our colleagues Yashira and Professor Ganpat. Well, I think this book is timely. We are actually this year celebrating 50 years of the creation of UNEP, United Nations Environmental Programme. We are also 1 month ahead of COP27. This would be most probably the last hope to save this planet, if we can, if leaders act. Otherwise, all reports are stating that we are heading towards an irreversible situation where we won't be able to really tackle climate change anymore. So this work took us a few years. Sheila, myself, we've been spending all our Saturday, Sundays together, enjoying her coffee. She makes very good coffee, I can tell you. And working throughout all the weekend and nearly every day to make sure that we get the right data, we get the right arguments to put in a book that will help everybody, be it academicians, scholars, those who love the environment, those who have at heart to save this planet. And this is where everything is today. We are very happy that we've reached this stage. Let me just take you quickly a little bit about what is there, what we have been doing. In fact, like I mentioned, 1972, we had the very first UN conference on human environment. It all started there, but there was a lot of work done prior to that to lead to that particular push-up by the United Nations to mainstream sustainable development and, in fact, the environment. That conference in 1972 had 4 major recommendations. Had our leaders implemented those 4 major recommendations, this planet would be a different planet today. Unfortunately, nothing has been done. 40 years of struggle. UN has been struggling 40 years to come to 2012, where they came up with this idea of let's have Agenda 2030. Let's have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which will be like a unanimous agenda for all the 197 countries present during Rio Plus 20. This is where all started in 2012. And from there, it took 3 years. Experts worked on it and they came with this formula. 17 subjects and issues that if we deal with them correctly, if we act on them, and if we implement them, we can change the fate of this planet and its population. So it's 17 goals touching everything that you would think is important for us, for our livelihood, to save the nature, for our natural capital, for the animals, for the ocean, to save the whales, and everything is there. So this is, we run through that a little bit. We run through those chapters. You will discover the important milestones, what are the big literatures that came in, and etc. 1972 was also the year where we had an eminent atmospheric scientist called J.S. Sawyer. He already predicted that if we don't do anything by year 2000, this planet will warm up by 0.6 degrees. Unfortunately, at that time, that didn't ring a bell in the years of our leaders, and even today it doesn't, because if you see how carbon emission has grown up since COVID, 6 billion tons more last year, and we are supposed to be like decreasing emission of carbon dioxide. In fact, it is increasing. And actually, in that 1972, which we deal, that was also the challenge to this growth. I think Sheila will touch on that a bit later. This, what we call GDP growth, was being challenged in that particular year because you had the first work coming from MIT, which was about, they published a report called Limits to Growth. So, I mean, that year was very important, and here we are today, 50 years, he's struggling with the same issues. Maybe with more technology, with a little bit more awareness around us, but this is what we do, and we run through the book as well. So it's important, most probably for you, to get a copy and go through that. Yes, we are here to advertise as well. Yeah. All right, and so we started about implementing the 17 SDGs in 2015. right? And in 2019, we were obliged, because we've signed on the agreement, we were obliged to eventually send a report to the United Nations. And in the report, Mauritius did, and we were shocked, to learn what was in the report. In fact, these 17 goals have been well thought by the best experts, by the best brain around in the world. It's a holistic package. You cannot pick and choose. You cannot say, because I'm going to address SDG 1, because we are doing well in that, not going to touch that particular SDG 15, because that is a hot potato, so I'm not going to touch that. So this is how Mauritius decided to address SDGs, and we deal with them. Mauritius have decided just to do SDG 1, SDG 4, SDG 13, and SDG 14. Only 4 out of 17. And stating we have achieved SDG 3. It's about health. So do you think we have achieved all our challenges in the health sector? We have achieved SDG 17, which is about partnership. Do you think we've done that? So how many people in this island doesn't even know about SDGs? I can tell you what percentage of the population in Mauritius know about SDGs. So just to let you know that, okay, we were not very convinced by the report, so we started digging, and then there was one international report, and we do that in the book. I'm going through the book, right? And we challenged a little bit the position of Mauritius. And when we say we have already achieved SDG 3, there is the report that comes out every year, which is called Sustainable Development Goal Report. In that particular report, what the big brains around have stated, only 3 countries so far has achieved SDG 3. That's only Australia, Sweden, and Norway. And where are we? So that fallacy, a little bit in the thinking in Mauritius, pushed us to go deep inside indicators, to look into the parameters, how they came to that conclusion. Why should we not believe in what they have written and submitted to the UN? We challenge that. We challenge that with data, with data figures, to show we are still very far from achieving SDG 3, SDG 17. Far about SDG 1, you are not at that stage. So we've compared the reports that came out locally and the reports that comes out internationally. This is what we've been doing. But at the same time, what we see, we went deep inside trying to find out what other 4 small islands have been doing, right? And we've chosen the islands, specifically 1 in the Pacific, 1 in the Caribbean, 1 in the West Coast, West African coast, 1 in Mauritius, Seychelles, Cape Verde, Papua, and eventually Trinidad and Tobago. So we've analyzed what are they doing in SDGs, in pushing their agenda. And you go through it, you'll discover the difference between how these people are addressing, how these countries are addressing their sustainability agenda, and how we are doing it in Mauritius. We also use what we call the primary dimensions to understand where we stand. Primary dimension of sustainable development, to understand where we stand as a country in terms of sustainable development. So having said that, then we said, okay, let us see whether we have the capacity here. Let us see whether we have the capacity. And we keep talking a lot about HDI, because we score very well on HDI. But what they don't tell you, that HDI, the Inequality Human Development Index, which they hide, we went into that. How about that one? When you look into that, then you'll see the difference between what our leaders keep telling us and what figures speak by themselves. These HDI is never talked about. So we went into that, but we went into a lot of other indicators like IWI, which is the Inclusive Wealth Index, which takes on board your human capital, your manufacturing capital, and it captures everything in a global way. We went into looking at the PCI, the Productive Capacity Index, to see, do we have this capacity in Mauritius? We went to look at the MVI, the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, to say where we stand, do we have all. When we went through all that, and you will discover it in the book, then you'll see, okay, we do have the capacity. We do have the resources to change this country. And why are we not doing it? Why are we failing so far? Why have we failed? Irrespective of whoever has ruled us, but we have failed so far, right? And then we come up to the COVID period, we analyze the COVID period, and then we also inspire ourselves very much, and I will end on that, with this great thinker, writer, economist Kate Raworth, which came up with this model of donut economics, describing the safe space where we should be heading, humanity should be heading to enable to save the planet, to save the people, and ensure that they have a prosperity and we have peace around in the world. So we analyze, we take that donut economics, we customize it to our local situation, putting data to see how good we are in trying to bring our population to that safe space where we want to be. And if we are not there, what are the efforts, collective efforts that we should be doing to eventually reach that safe space within those parameters? This is a bit about the book. This is what we've done. And I do hope that by reading through it, there's a lot of data, a lot of table, a lot of comparison between the reports. So I do hope that you will enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sunil. Our next speaker will be Sheila Benwari.
A very good afternoon to you all. Allow me to join my colleagues to wish you a very warm welcome on this very special occasion of the launch of our book, Professor Gambal, Sunil Singh, and myself. I'm so pleased to have you all here, and all protocols observed. I'm not a very protocol kind of a person, but I would like to say a special word to our chief guest, Professor Pasuraman. Thank you for agreeing to launch the book for us. And I must say, Professor Pasuraman is the person who actually launched my first book many, many years ago when I just completed my PhD thesis in the presence of one of my colleagues at the university who unfortunately couldn't be here this afternoon, Mrs. Vidulana Bamse. So thank you, Professor Pasuraman, and thank you, Dr. Acha, for gracing us with your presence and also for supporting us with the book. And Professor Dr. Acha will also be saying a few words. I think we missed saying that earlier on. Let me take it from where Sunil left it. Unlike Sunil, I was getting worried because he was saying too much about the book and he only wanted by the book. Unlike Sunil, I will say just one or two things about the book. What I want to sort of emphasize is that when you heard Professor Gunpert and Sunil explain to you a little bit of why we did the book, we were right in the midst of COVID, which had paralyzed the whole world. And we quickly were following all the events, all the news that were coming out from COVID. And I was the one who proposed to Sunil and to Professor Gunpert that this book cannot be a mere analysis of the SDGs. Analysis of the SDGs is very important, but we had to really think of where do we go from here? Because we are not safe from the pandemics. We are told, and we know that experts tell us that with the way that nature is being destroyed permanently on a permanent basis, we are bound to have more pandemics. Not that we are hoping for this, certainly not, but it is bound to happen because of the fact that we have entered what we call the Anthropocene age, that men, human beings, continue to destroy nature in very many ways. Despite all the policies, despite all the efforts being done, we find that there is a systematic destruction taking place. Hence, for us to be able to save the planet, which is the wish of Sunil and our own wish, and I hope the wish of everyone else, for the sake of future generations, and I see many young people in the room, and many less young people in the room, including myself. So it's very, very nice that we have all these diverse people, but particularly for the young generations, because I talk a lot to the young people, and I know how worried they are about their future. I know how worried they are and how anxious they are about what is going to happen to this world. And I see Father Nabo in our midst, and it really warms the heart, because I know of your combat for l'écologie, Father Nabo, and it's very nice that you're here, because I think together, with all the great work that you are doing, and many, many other colleagues in the room are doing, I think we will be able perhaps to push forward. So what do we propose in the book as a potential way forward in order to address all the destruction that has been taking place so that we can actually save the planet and also have a more just world. Sunil spoke about Kate Raworth, the professor at Oxford, one of the rare women economists at Oxford University who actually comes up with the donut economics model. And we've leaned on her work to basically say that we've reached a point in this world where we really need what we call an alternative development paradigm. What is this alternative development paradigm? We actually use the matrix. It's very common, the matrix, the 5 P's and the 5 D's, to be able to explain what this paradigm is all about. The 5 P's are basically people, planet, participation, peace, and prosperity. So if these are the 5 P's, let's ask ourselves, what are the 5 D's that surround this notion? And I'll go in a little bit of detail about Kate Raworth's theory in a minute, but let's pay some attention to what are those 5 D's and why are they so important to this alternative development paradigm that we are proposing. So the 5 D's are democratization, further democratization, which we badly need, decentralization, digitalization, and also the most important one perhaps at this point is decarbonization, which we really need to do, and also the one that I never forget because that is my big thing, that we cannot have a world where we create human beings who are left behind. So my last D, which I have added to the matrix actually because it was not in the matrix, I have added it, and it is dignity, human dignity. Now, having said that, what is the model? What is the alternative development paradigm model all about? The alternative development paradigm model is basically rejecting the notion of the world that we are living in, which is totally emphasizing GDP growth. Sunil said that perhaps I will talk about it. Not perhaps, Sunil, I will talk about it. Because the world is focused on one measure of progress. The GDP growth is what we also in Mauritius and in many other places. But GDP growth is important. We are not degrowthers. There is a category, a school of thought, which is called degrowthers. You know, they don't believe in growth at all. They say no growth. No, we are not degrowthers, but we are saying that the quality of growth is extremely important. And we would rather have measures such as the GPI, which is becoming more of the trend these days, which is the Genuine Progress Indicator, and also what the Human Development Report 2020 calls the Planetary Pressures Index, which brings in the human dimension into it. And that is totally related to what Kate Raworth proposes in terms of the ecological ceiling. Because if we allow our ecological footprint to go beyond a certain threshold, we are doomed. There is no future. So this alternative development paradigm is therefore encased in this notion of the 5 P's and the 5 D's, but also we have also added the 5 C's, which is not part of it, but we'll come back to that later, and I'll tell you the reason I brought in the 3 C's as well. But what is important is the notion of development. Related to this growth is the notion of development. Because as I was saying earlier on, I think many of our leaders across the world, and certainly in Mauritius, put so much emphasis on development in terms of infrastructure, in terms of buildings, in terms of roads, in terms of the economy's growth by offshore and offshoring. But what is missing is the Amartya Sen's notion of development, which is development as freedoms. Sorry, but I need some more because I have a little problem with my phone. Excuse me, please. Yeah, so it is Amartya Sen's notion of development, which is a notion of development as freedoms, whereby he emphasizes the freedom from joblessness, freedom from joblessness, freedom from homelessness, the freedom from homelessness, and the freedom from malnutrition, and the freedom from starvation, and the freedom from illiteracy. These are then what we factor into the model is these are the fundamental socio-economic rights that we all need to be able to live a decent life. And therefore, that is the model we propose. Now, I will not go into the details of what are the recommendations that we make in the book to actually propose how to bring this model, implement this model. It is a very important model, but what do we do? What are the recommendations? That I will refrain from doing. I will leave you to read it. But just for me to tell you that reading the recommendations is one thing. You would be surprised that the book is also, and I work a lot on governance and development for those who know me for the past few years, the book is also a critique of governments and governance, but a critique not because we want to tear everything down, but simply because we believe that unless we have the kind of governance that is required to be able to bring that model into implementation, and that requires a lot. And that too is something that we go into details in the book. So what I would do, I would like to end by reading a quote from Wangari Maathai, one of my favorite thinkers and writers who is no more in this world, who we quote in this book. This is a picture for those of you who may not be too familiar. You may not see it too well. This is the picture of Wangari Maathai down there. And she says this. And I'll read it and you'll understand why I'm reading it. You cannot protect the environment unless you empower people. You inform them and you help them understand that these resources are their own, that they must protect them. We have a responsibility to protect the rights of generations of all species that cannot speak for themselves today. The global challenge of climate change requires that we ask no less of our leaders or ourselves. So this book is much more than a scholarly piece of work. It's true that we spent days on end working on it as scholars, but it's much more than a scholarly piece of work. It is an advocacy tool. It is an advocacy tool to make us become the instruments of transformation, to make us believe that we have the necessary energies to ensure that the rights of every human being are respected and the rights of nature are protected and respected. On this note, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. I would now like to invite Dr. Acha for his address.
Merci. Adresse, no, just a few words. Since Sunil started on history, let me take 72 to now and then situate that book. Why 72? Parce que en 1972, mon premier Mauritius fait un master's en environnement à Salford, a stone's throw from Old Trafford in Manchester. And même à un moment donné, moi, j'ai un scholarship pour aller. Je passe devant le gouvernement, et c'est ça, il fait appel à moi, dis-moi, environmental resources, qui était ça? Chemistry, physics, biology, environmental, qui était ça? And I had enough, somehow, courage to do that. And since 72, when we had the conference in Stockholm, major books have been published in environment, and I did my duty to follow that. In 86, I joined UNEP, and then a book came out. I want to say a word about that before we come to the book of today. Written by Tolba, the director, ex-director of UNEP. Tolba and others, I contributed to that. I just joined UNEP as Chief of Education. And that book said to the world, il y a trois problèmes pévini. Climate change, global warming, and sea level rise. Ça c'est typique ce qui peut arriver zone. And the book of those three people addresses that seriously. People say something and don't do it. You don't walk your talk. You don't walk your talk. Those three things, all governments, it was in Nairobi, UNEP is in Nairobi, all governments there said yes, you're right, Hardly anybody, except a few, Sweden was one of them, except a few, did anything about it. And this is 72, 86, and things moved until today. We are in, I won't apologize for using the word Udogambes, really. Because I think the view that we've got, somebody said 100 million galaxies. Each galaxy has got millions of suns. All those suns have got planets. We have the chance to have one planet, one, where temperatures are below 50 and above minus 50. Can support life. Et nous plaisir à ça. So, any literature, any contribution to that is a useful thing. I'll give you a quiz. What is SDGs? Apart from Mabula, what is SSR? What is SSR today? Sheila, Sunil, etc. And I really welcome the new and positive addition to the environment literature. Really, it's a positive addition. One of the main things that took a long time to write. Before, etc. President of the Academy of Science, we even did a small contribution to help it go forward. And I recommend that decision makers and others, journalists can help, they are here today, read that book. A contribution like that must be read. Pas dire, you into the couverture. No, it has to be read. And this is how we move forward. I was asked to say a few words, so I think my few words are finished. But I'll say one last thing, which also that book covers with the 5 E's, 5 P's, 5 D's, which I was referring to. I had the honor to be one of the people who helped to work out this Sustainable Development Goals. Pas la 17, 930, we retain the last 30. Then the Secretary General said 17, so I had to reduce it to 17. There are others very important. And a few of these others, without thinking, are in that book. And that's very important. These are the things, in short, which the world must do to save the planet as a habitable place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Acha. And I have the pleasure to welcome Professor Paul for his speech.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Professor Sheila Banwari, my friend Sunil Lokasingh, and Professor Rajendra Prasad Ganpat. All protocol observed, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I must first of all congratulate all of you for honoring our three authors with your presence, the distinguished galaxy of personalities in Mauritius from various fields, and I must thank you on their behalf for honoring them with this presence. Well, I'm also happy that our friend Dr. Michael Acha, who is one of the leading experts, not only in Mauritius, globally in this field, and he has shared with us a few thoughts from his own experience. Well, I'm very happy to be with you this evening to launch the book Sustainability and SDGs in Mauritius COVID-19, Opportunity or Constraint. Written jointly by Professor Sheila Banwari, Sunil Dwaka Singh, and Professor Rajendra Ganpal. Let me say about Sheila Banwari, I know her for many, many years because she was the teacher of my 2 daughters. And they are very proud of you and what you imparted to them. And also a friend of my wife, and also a very good friend of mine for many years. We've been together. As he said, I launched the first book, but we also worked together in Dakar when I was director of UNESCO in Senegal. Dakar, she was there at Codestria, and we had collaborated there also. And Sunil Dwaka Singh, who started his political career together, you joined us at that time, and then he blossomed. But what you are doing now, Sunil, is impressive. I must say, I value very much your contribution to this field, and you are really an expert in the field, and it's useful for you to continue that. And I was very happy to be reminded by Professor Rajendra Ganpal that I attended his presentation of his thesis 30 years ago. Frankly, I forgot about it, to be honest. But I feel very happy that I was there, and I was proud to be there. And I'm also proud that you've achieved a lot since then, and congratulations. So you could see that my joy of being present here, not only as Sheila said, I've accepted it, but for me it's a pleasure. You honored me by doing so. And I'm very happy to be with you on this occasion. Well, before I comment on the book itself, allow me to share some of my thoughts as to why I think this launch is different to other launches, or constitutes a most special moment with family, friends, colleagues, and other stakeholders gathered here in this lecture theatre at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute. It is perhaps also no coincidence that the authors chose this lecture theatre for the launch, since the notion of sustainability itself, the very theme of their book, resonates with the Mahatma Gandhi's preachings, the preaching of non-violence. And I would like to give you a quote of Gandhi, which I just found on Google. This idea of sustainability figures prominently in Gandhi's teachings as well. He mentioned that what we do today is our future. He also said, we should not look upon the natural resources, water, air, land, as inheritance from our forefathers. He considered them to be loan given to us by our next generation. I think if we meditate on the wise saying of Gandhi, we understand our role and responsibility in that. And therefore, referring to Gandhi, sustainability and sustainable development are in fact about stopping all forms of destruction of the economy, destruction of environment, destruction of biodiversity. In short, suitability and sustainable development are about putting an end to the many forms of systemic and structural violence. Book launches usually consist of an opportunity for authors and publishers to publicize the work done, market what is usually called the product, a term that is not always very appropriate, especially when it comes to knowledge. Book launches are usually a space to meet more or less like-minded people with fairly similar interests. There is usually some kind of commodification element attached to book launches, but in this case, it's much more. It goes beyond simply the publicizing of the work and the sales of the book, albeit these remain important. It is about gathering a group of people for a cause and hoping that all of you present here become the champions of this cause and thus have a multiplier effect so that together we can make a difference. What is this cause? It is about saving our oceans, our forests, our rivers, waterways, both our marine and terrestrial diversity, and in so doing promote and respect the rights of nature and thus ensure that the future of the younger generations is not compromised. While talking of the younger generation while going through the book, I cannot fail not to refer to this very important reference, and I must commend all of you for choosing the right voices who have spoken so eloquently and forcefully on the climate, on the environment issue, you know, and I won't even, the many of them were very, very, very interesting, but I choose one. And having been Minister of Education, I would like to choose a young student. And Greta Thunberg, and the book, I called that, with your permission, The Young Climate Activist Intervention of the Climate Action Summit in New York. In September 2019, it speaks volume, her voice is captured below, and I quote that. You will see it in the book. So if you want to know more about it, you have to buy the book to be able to discover that. You have stated, I quote, "You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction. And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you are doing enough, when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight?" End of quotation. And I'm glad that you jump on this quotation from this young, bright mind, and you said, this I quote, "You're the author now. Can we therefore expect, and I hope that politics and solutions needed that Greta Thunberg refers to will be discussed, agreed upon, and brought to the fore in these challenging pandemic times? Can leaders and policymakers let go of their inclination for excessive profits, aggressive capitalism, and unbridled development to opt for a more people and nature-centric alternative development model infused with compassion, care, and solidarity, intertwining the economic, social, and environmental domains? In short, a development paradigm which demands that trade-offs be minimized, or better still, that be avoided altogether." I think that quote fits in very well with the book, the publication, and you respond to that very strongly as we go along in the book. Well, in short, this book is about transformation and change. It is advocating for an alternative developmental paradigm, as I said. This book launch is different to other launches because the authors wish to take the commitment for further engagement on the critical issues they raise. Professor Banwari has in fact asked me to let you know that if there is any aspect of the book you wish to discuss further, and if your institution's organization wish to organize any sort of workshop, roundtables, conferences around the thematic of the book, the authors will be more than willing to do that, at no cost to the organizations concerned. The authors, in fact, want this launching ceremony, as well as the book, of course, to serve as a launch pad for further debates and action. And this is original. Let me come more specifically to the book itself. The book, in fact, testifies to a feat of interdisciplinary work and represents a rare merging of scholarship and activism, or militantism, if I may. And this is what makes it so unique. The theme chosen by the authors, sustainability and the SDGs, COVID-19, opportunity or constraint, is most timely and pertinent. Given the global overlapping crisis, the ripple effects of the pandemic, the Ukraine war, the food crisis, the cost of living crisis, the climate change crisis, we cannot but ask ourselves certain fundamental questions. The authors brilliantly show us that business cannot be as usual, and if the course of history is to be changed, then we as human beings, particularly as islanders, exposed to diverse forms of small states, related vulnerabilities, have to readjust our modes of consumption and production. Making SDG 12 extremely important, the authors insist on the fact, and rightly so, that the SDGs cannot be treated in isolation, since they're all connected and central to the fundamental socio-economic rights of people. And I think Sunil Dwakasing emphasized the holistic approach to the SDGs, and not choose one and say we'll do that and then do that later. It doesn't work like that. The book is spread over 8 chapters. The book beautifully responds to the multiple objectives that the authors set themselves. I must confess that when I saw the main aim of the book at page 37, and how this was then split into some 10 more specific objectives in the tradition of PhD thesis writing, I got a bit worried and said to myself, well, this is going to be tough for a non-conversant reader, but I was proved wrong. The book is in fact an original contribution of knowledge and comes to fill in an important knowledge gap in the field of environment and development literature. In small states like ours, but it is written in a user-friendly language, thus making it accessible to all. Moreover, the plan of the authors, as mentioned in the preface, is to look for resources to eventually get it translated into Creole, so as to reach a wider audience and thus make many more of us the torch bearers of the alternative development paradigm proposed here. And I'm also thinking that as part of my own service to humanity, and after talking to Sheila Banwari, we don't have to neglect those who are print disabled, people who will not be able to read this document. I in mind especially the visually impaired, the blind community. And I can assure you, Sheila, I've done it for many other cases. When a blind child in Goodlands was attending secondary school and didn't have the books in Braille for maths and for the other languages, was deprived of that, I intervened with Bookshare. Bookshare is a virtual global library for blind people, for visually impaired, what they call print disabled. And all the books were uploaded on the Bookshare. I have a special connection with them, and I will get this book uploaded and inform the community of visually impaired. But what makes this feat of interdisciplinary and the richness of thinking possible? It is these three brilliant and engaged minds, knowing all three authors and their respective backgrounds as well as their personalities, to some extent, I can fully appreciate how this 417-page book came together. Make no mistake, it may be easy for us to sit in our lounge and turn the pages in volume and enjoy the work, an amazing combination of high-quality scholarship, passion and activism, but the task of the authors has been a daunting one. They spent almost 2 years reading, interviewing, researching, analyzing, getting angry at each other, I understand, struggling with the tensions of COVID-19, and yet they painstakingly stuck at it to produce this work for us all and for the common good. Their concern regarding the threats that climate change poses to humanity and how neoliberalism, with its emphasis on deregulation, privatization, liberalization, exacerbates this threat and tramples on the rights of citizens is perhaps what kept them going. But I must admit also, they didn't have only that to do within the 2 years. But among all that they had to do, they devoted so much time to this publication. Drawing from his expertise in environmental science and his years of working as a strategist at Greenpeace, Sunil Dwakasingh is bent on the preservation and conservation of biodiversity in all its forms, and has profound knowledge of mitigation and adaptation capacities. He is a system analyst and a regular intervener in the media on climate change issues. Needless to add that his time as a parliamentarian has also made him realize how tough it can be to bring the right policies to the table, and how the making and passing of legislation can continue to have loopholes which therefore impact on the well-being of citizens and development. His lenses bring exceptional value to the book. Rajendra Prasad Ganpat, PhD in law, professor of law at the University of Mauritius, with very rich insights on different aspects of the law and his participation in various expert meetings and conferences of the SDGs, always striving to push the sustainable development agenda forward, made of him an asset to the team, but also I would say to the nation. What drove him to see this book project through it is not only his own conviction and research expertise, but the various exchanges he has had with the two authors, Sunil and Sheila. Particularly Sheila, since Sheila has the art of collegiality, bringing people to work together and get the best out of each person. I know many of your students, Sheila, who might work with me eventually, and they talk about you as a good guru. But more importantly, because Sheila is an embodiment of interdisciplinarity herself. She started off a career as an economics teacher after having read a BSc Economics and Sociology joint honors, followed by an MSc Econ in social planning and then a PhD. She rose to the pinnacle of academia with a full-fledged professorship and a personal chair in the development studies and gender. She is now a consultant in governance and development, but Sheila Banwari does not stop astounding us. And I must say, I just learned about this, Sheila. I didn't know about it because we've not been in touch regularly. But Sheila Banwari does not stop astounding us. The very many injustices, including gender and climate injustices, also important with huge ramification for the attainment of the SDGs that we saw on the campaign trail prior to her standing as a candidate for the 2014 election, triggered her to enroll for a full-fledged 3 years full-time degree course in law as a mature student. She distinguished herself with the first class honors in law and now takes her transgression of disciplinary boundaries to greater heights. If I may, Sheila, I would encourage you to go for bar. My eldest daughter, Navina, whom you know, when she did LLB, she didn't want to go to bar. Some people hesitate to take the bar, but I pushed her. I said, you have to. And that's what took her to be a magistrate. But if you have this law degree, it's not enough. Get the mantle, get the gown, so you can go and plead there. This is very well reflected in the book. Sheila's passion for social justice and for ethical governance makes of her one of our rare public intellectuals who is determined to bring the world of the researcher to that of the policymaker. The book put together by the three authors testify to this. When you read the book, one can therefore see and appreciate how the arguments are woven in and around these various disciplines, allowing the book to culminate with some key recommendations for transformation. The three authors have already given you an overview of the book, but allow me to say that as I skimmed through the 8 chapters of the book, chapter 1, historical background and controversies around sustainable development, chapter 2, small island states, the VNR process and sustainability, chapter 3, the voluntary national review of Mauritius, a true or false picture of the state of SDGs, chapter 4, the SDG reports, a more accurate picture, chapter 5, indices, data complexity and policy coherence, chapter 6, COVID-19, turning a crisis into an opportunity, chapter 7, reinventing the economy, chapter 8, an alternative development paradigm, and of course the introduction and the conclusion. I realize how much effort and research Sunil, Rajendra, and Sheila have put in to actually raise the consciousness of the average citizen on the multiplicity of challenges that we face as a small island state at this juncture. I could, after perusing the book, understand better as to why they had set themselves some 10 objectives at page 37 to 38. I must admit that when I look at the objectives, I was pretty taken aback and say to myself, how on earth can any thinker, author ensure that they meet all these objectives? And yet they do, and in the most impressive manner. Allow me to give you a flavor of these objectives and whet your appetite. Sunil, Sheila, and Rajendra tell us on page 37 that the book aims at getting citizens from all walks of life to call for a new economic model, one which encompasses notions of sustainability and leaving no one behind at the core of its functioning. This big aim is then split into 10 more specific objectives. I will not read all the 10 objectives to you, but allow me to read a few. 1. Familiarize the community with the SDGs framework and create an opportunity for citizens to the pertinence of a rights-based approach to development, as well as the specific challenges that small states such as Mauritius face to achieve UN Agenda 2030, the meeting of the 17 SDG goals. Open up a debate and dialogue around SDGs so that the community owns the SDG framework and understand that every citizen has a crucial role to play so as to ensure that intra and intergenerational equity be improved. We've heard from many of the speakers that SDGs is not known in the Mauritian community very well. So you can only do it by involving the population, and this is where the idea of familiarizing the community, sensitization, talking to them about it, brings them on board. And if you don't get the people with you on board, no reform, no progress can happen, because they are the ones who are acting on the ground, and you need them together with you. I'm skipping a few of the objectives. Objective 5, encourage further data collection and disaggregation to advocate and shape policies for a green, gender inclusive and a more just society. Objective 8, fill in an important gap in the development and environment literature and capacitate the citizenry to contribute to a more inclusive, regenerative and distributive economy, along with the feminist agenda. And there are a couple more. I have browsed through the chapters, and not only do I see continuity of thinking and argumentation around the questions they raise, but I see a connecting thread in the way that the book evolves and culminates into the last chapter, that is, the urgency of an alternative development paradigm, followed by some recommendations. The latter revolve around whole of society approach, and this is the approach. This has to be the holistic approach we need in any development. And I will refrain from saying more, so that you get your own copy. I think I've made a good marketing for them, and they deserve it. And discover for yourself what this whole of society approach entails. But I can certainly tell you that you will not be disappointed, and wish to congratulate the authors wholeheartedly, as well as thank them for bringing a work of such great value to the attention of all. I can only hope that we all here present at this launch will see value in it and also become effective instruments for transformation and salvage what is left for our children and grandchildren. In fact, the very introduction, which encompasses a collection of voices from different disciplines and across the globe, is written in the most unconventional manner, as the authors themselves point out. It is deliberately long and wants to serve as some kind of well-worked-out summary of the book for those who do not have the time to go through the volume in one go. The introduction also provides us with a well-worked-out outline of each chapter. They brilliantly bring their thinking together by finally making some recommendations which can facilitate the embracement of a new development model. Allow me to conclude, before concluding, to give one thought about, when I look at the galaxy of people present here, so much resources, human resources we have. Each one of you has competence in various fields. What are we doing to galvanize all these resources that we have? We have people who have had wonderful experiences in life. And if you ask them to come and give back to the country, they will do it. But are we doing that? Are we calling them to serve our country, to dedicate themselves to the cause that we have? You know, see those brilliant people here, how much work they've done. And you know, Sunil has been recognized globally, right? Sheila has done that, and Rajendra also. So, but are we using them in our country? That's the challenge. And that's the fate, unfortunately. Or many great experts that we have in our own country, we don't use them enough for whatever reason, and this is wrong. You know, we need to bring them to the Michael, for example. We need to bring them on board, because each one of you would like, before you leave this earth, before you leave Mauritius, you know, you'd like to give back to your country. I use the term giving back. Intellectually or otherwise, each one of us can give back, and we should give back. It's our duty towards the nation. It's our duty towards our children. For whatever we have benefited in this country, it's our duty at a point in time to give back. And therefore, my appeal, I don't know whether it will be heard, my appeal is for the authorities to call upon all these people and appeal to them in a very genuine manner. Not in a way of, in a bossy manner, you know, we tell them, oh, I need you, or if you propose something, they say, you know too much. It's the attitude that we have, unfortunately. You know? We don't respect our own people. Nul ne prophète dans son pays, as we said. But this is very bad. Because all these resources are here. They have got it from the country. They have gathered it internationally. We need to pool all of them. And along with the national experts available, you know, those who are retired, they are assets to the country. Somebody who has had so many experiences, if you don't use them, you know, then you are losing them. And this is not good for the country, for a small country like Mauritius. And I hope this will resonate. People will recall that and do the best to bring all our human resources that we have to work together to save our country, to support and develop our country further. And for this, I would like to say, my own personal experience when I came back after retirement from UNESCO, after 14 years abroad, I came back. I offered voluntarily my service to the country, to bring whatever network, whatever experience I have at the service of my country without expecting anything. I was not looking for any job. But when I saw the attitude, I decided to do something myself. And that's where Global Rainbow Foundation was born. I'm happy that on the 11th of November we'll celebrate our 11th anniversary. And this is service to humanity. And I was telling you also, you heard the title professor. I have also the title of doctor. Let me clarify that. Right? When I was working as director of UNESCO New Delhi, I was associated with a major university in Delhi because they wanted to launch global model United Nations, which I introduced in Mauritius as minister. And I helped them. And they made an international moon. They didn't have model only, Amity International Model United Nations. And they recognized my work and they were so happy with it that they offered me the title of professor. And then, I must say, in 2018, I was honored in a most significant way by the governor of Tamil Nadu, who conferred upon me the honoris causa of the Tamil University in Tanjavur, which is a prestigious university. That's why I have these two titles, and people use them alternatively. But what I'm trying to say, we need to use our resources, our human resources. These people belong to this country. Each one of us would like to give back to this country before we leave. And that's it. And in recognition of what India has given to me, in this simple recognition, I'm pleased to announce to you that I've also launched a Global Rainbow Foundation India, which is a big challenge. I launched it in June this year at IIT Madras Research Park, and now I'm pursuing this matter with UNESCO in Delhi and so on. That's my way of giving back to India as a recognition. Let me conclude. We talk about SDGs. I cannot fail not to mention the SDG, which for me is also very important, SDG 16. The Millennium Development Goals made a blunder. They never talk of disability, of inclusive societies. And that was corrected by the SDGs, fortunately. And this SDG is central to include an inclusive society where people with disability can be given their role rightfully, fundamental rights, and can serve the nation. And many of them are great examples of doing that. And therefore, unfortunately, this SDG is not being addressed by the government. And I am still looking for the disability bill, which will be a major step forward for this SDG. And let's hope that it will come, that this is something which is very important. So with these few words outside this conference, but I think it's related to SDG, let me conclude now by reiterating my sincere congratulations to Sheila Banravi, Sunil Dwaka Singh, and Rajendra Ganpat for this timely and useful publication, Sustainability and SDGs in Mauritius, COVID-19, Opportunity or Constraint, which I'm sure will be of interest to the UN agencies concerned and to university researchers and university students in the field. I took the liberty of sharing with you, Sheila, that this book cannot stay only with the Mauritians. I would encourage you to take an appointment with the EU ambassador. He's a good man, a man of vision. Right? I work closely with him, with my foundation. You go and meet him and share the inside of the book with him. Present a copy to him. You will have an advocate in him. And I would encourage you to do that. But send it to all the UN agencies. You three can write a letter to the Director General of those UN agencies concerned. Send them a copy of the book as your contribution. You will get a response from them. And this will bring the book to international attention. And I would encourage you to do that. So I would conclude now with the most important last statement I would do, that it's my duty, after you listen to me, after you all come over all the way to this event, each one of you should go back with one book in your hand and share it. share it with as many people, advocate for it. This is what they want, right? And support them because this book, 500 rupees, is not a big sum of money, I must say, for the wealth of work they've done. But they have to cover the cost of the publication at a time when people don't read enough, right? So I would encourage you to do that, and I'm sure you will help and join them for the cause that they've advocated for. Thank you for your kind attention.